and welcome to the Get Fit with Jodelle show. I am Jodelle as usual, and my guest today I am happy to have on is a guy, actually a really fun guy named Rob Sleamaker. And he, according to the website that I was looking up about him, he's a sporty Vermonter, an innovator, and a darn good guy. And he's also an exercise physiologist and an author. But his mainstay is being the founder and creator of one of my favorite ways to train indoors, which is the Vasa trainer. So I wanted to bring Rob on because of my love for the Vasa trainer, as I use it to train indoors as a professional stand-up paddle athlete. And it's been a lifesaver for improving my stroke, my power output, allowing me to train for charity paddles like I like to do when I can't get to the water. And so Rob, it's good to have you on today. Thank you for joining me. Do you want to tell him briefly just who you are, any more than what I said?
Well, thanks, Jodelle. It's good to be with you today, and I appreciate this opportunity to, just to share ideas and talk with you. Boy, that was like the best introduction I've had in a long time, and it sort of reminded me of, like, I was in the grocery store the other day, and some lady called me dear. I'm like, oh my God, no, that's wonderful. Only my wife calls me dear. So anyway, that was a nice introduction. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't have anything more to say.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, unless you want me to give you, I can give you the Reader's Digest condensed version of how I got where I am, but I don't know if that's interesting to people.
Well, that'd be kind of cool. Yeah, just a brief version of, like, I definitely want to talk about what the Vasa trainer is, because maybe some of my listeners don't know. But also, this is the time of year when people are starting to think about their fitness goals and their protocols, what they'll be doing for the new year to get fit. And so, part of me bringing you on was to have you share about why this product may be actually the one thing they haven't tried yet out of all the things they've tried, because it's a little lesser known. And, a lot of people beat themselves up to train or to get their fitness goals in order, doing things they don't love. But the Vasa trainer actually offers you a way to work out that may be conducive to some of the sports you already love. So yeah, just tell me about that. Tell me about, like, how you got where you are, and then just let's talk about what exactly is the Vasa trainer.
Yeah, well, actually, I'll reverse that. I'll tell people quickly what it is. So my company, Vasa, or if someone wants to go on the website, it's vasatrainer.com. So we make sport-specific exercise equipment. I design and I work with a team of people who comes up with how to get these into production. But so we make a couple of different machines. You've been referring to actually what we call our ergometer, and we make a swimming ergometer, and the one that you have is our space saver ergometer that mounts to the wall, that can be used for swim training. It can be used for stand-up paddle training. It can be used for dragon boat and canoe paddling and kayak paddling, as well as just functional strength and physical therapy and rehab. And with the ergometer, basically the way it works is people can think of like a rowing machine with the air fan resistance, but it's used, like I said, for swimming and for paddle sports. And but the resistance is airflow. It's air fan, so it feels very similar to pulling your paddle. Like if we're going to say stand-up paddling, it feels very similar to pulling your paddle through water. Same with swimming. When someone is laying down on a bench and using it for swim training, it feels like pulling your hands through water. Mm-hmm. So that's why we like air resistance as the form of resistance, as opposed to like magnetic or some kind of what am I trying to say? Some kind of other form of resistance that are out there that they don't feel so great. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so that's kind of what the thing is. We have another machine called the Vasa Trainer, which is also the namesake of the website. But the Trainer is actually one of the first machines I developed, and that one you can use it for swim training. You can use it for total body fitness training. A lot of physical therapists and use it for rehab. But it's basically a padded bench that's on a rolling seat carriage that rolls along a monorail, and you can elevate the incline of that monorail 15 different settings, and you pull on cords that are connected to the rolling seat carriage, so that when you pull on those, the whole, your body weight and everything goes up and down. It's a lot like, you know, people are familiar with the Total Gym and Chuck Norris and Christy Brinkley sell on infomercials, except ours is quite a bit, it's a whole different level of quality and
Yes.
functionality because of you know, the sports specificity of it. I mean, I don't mean to drop names, but basically nearly every high level swimmer in the country, if not in the world, has trained on the Vasa trainer or the Vasa Swim Erg at some time or another, and for various reasons. You know, sometimes they use it for developing strength, sometimes they use it for improving technique, and sometimes they might have an injury, a lower body injury, and they can't go in the water. So it's a great supplement for, you know, when people either can't go in the water because of an injury, or in your case, can't get to the water, or it's too cold to go on the water to do your sport.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, we live in Vermont. The lake is frozen right now. I'm staring at a foot of snow outdoors. And so, you know, for me to go out to try to find some open water and do stand-up paddling would be crazy. It'd be dangerous, for one, but it's also unlikely to find anything open. and you know, a big part of the country is facing that right this time of year. So being able to come indoors, do a really high quality, intensive training workout on, you know, one of the Vasa ergometers is outstanding, because, you know, 15 or 20 minutes and you're, you know, dripping with sweat,
Yes.
having had an incredible workout that feels very similar to paddling through water.
Yes.
And there's no coasting. You're either paddling on the thing or you're not paddling on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's high. And I love your workout, the Tabata workout, where, you know, you're on and off the paddling and doing other core exercises and other body exercises. That's like that's the way to do it, because, you know, or do it with a friend where you trade off. One person is paddling while the other one's doing other exercises off of it, and then back and forth like that. You know, that's a great way to get a great workout and pass, you know, 20 or 30 minutes quickly. So,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so
anyway,
going back to how you founded it, and how did you get into creating this product?
Right. So it's a long story that I'll try to keep as brief as possible. But I went to graduate school for exercise physiology. And when I moved back to Vermont, I got very involved with Nordic skiing, cross-country skiing, and biathlon. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, I designed the very first Vasa trainer, but it was for ski training. But that experience working, you know, training Nordic ski athletes and developing the first Vasa trainer to develop the muscles that are used in propelling yourself on cross-country skis, you know, with your upper body, like a double poling motion. At the same time, I was working with some elite triathletes and said, oh, you know, that design that I just came up with, the Vasa trainer, if I just put a flat bench on there, instead of for the cross country when you're actually in a standing position, mm-hmm. straddling the monorail, but I changed the seat, the rolling seat, and I put a flat bench so that you could lay down and do swim motions. So that kind of took off. And in fact, when we first exposed that to swim coaches in 1989, 3 Olympic coaches came up and went crazy over it. They had never seen it before, and they said, man, this is what we've been looking for years, and if someone finally did it. And they each bought a bunch of machines, and that kind of, like, from a company point of view or business point of view, we really started going off into the swimming and triathlon side of things, and less so in the cross-country skiing side of things, which is really kind of phased out now for us. And then along the way, you know, growing the business, I also realized that I love to innovate. And so the ergometer was one of the next big innovations that we came up with, because I saw the need and I felt like there was a better way to train for swimming, though, because the Vasa trainer, original Vasa trainer, is really better suited for specific strength training, and the ergometer can be used for developing power, developing stamina and endurance, as well as they both work really well for improving technique, because you're you're out of the water, you're above ground, you can see what's going on with your form, and you can make improvements with that. But from a physiologic point of view, developing power and strength and endurance, the ergometer is a great machine. Plus it has electronics, very precise measurements of power and time and distance and things like that, which can be motivational for a lot of people to be able to see their numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Realized I like to innovate. I came up with that idea, and then we put it into our product stream, and off we go.
Wonderful. Well, I know I've really enjoyed it, because it's like a night and day difference compared to when I first got into paddling and I could just only go to the water. And then when I got my hands on my SUP Erg, then I was able to train anytime I wanted to in my little home fitness studio and get prepared for the water, even in the dead of winter. And I train clients in my studio. And so people that weren't even paddlers, all the way to people that were paddlers, I was training indoors. And I could do just a variety of even just resistance training exercises with them, where I'm just using the cables as resistance. And so to me, it became kind of a no-brainer that anybody can benefit from this, whether they are a swimmer or whether they're a stand-up paddler or whether they're just looking for some sort of a device, or what you call a supplement. You can supplement your other workouts with this, something that would supplement weights, would supplement resistance bands and things like that, but make it in a space saver way too, because it doesn't take up any space in my home. It's just right there anchored to the wall, and I've moved it, like we've moved homes. I've been able to take it with me. So, I mean, it's been kind of a no-brainer. So, the benefits of training indoors, I don't think people that are, unless you're an athlete, you don't really understand how you really do need some way to train indoors. Can you talk about that a little? Like some of what you were mentioning was really something I hadn't thought about, was how swim training, when the coach can see you training out of the water, they might not be able to see what it is causing you to malfunction in the water, but once you're out of the water training on like the Vasa trainer, then they can actually pinpoint, oh, I see what's going on here. So talk about some of those benefits of dry land training.
Sure. Well, improving your form and your technique is going to be important to some people and less important to others. So much depends on what your personal goals are for, your fitness and how, if you're racing and you want to be as efficient as possible and build up your fitness, then paying attention to technique and form is much more important. Mm-hmm. If a person is just interested in recreational paddling, or swimming or what have you, or they really just are a believer in lifelong fitness and they're looking for other ways to challenge their bodies, then form is important, but more from an injury prevention point of view than it is, say, from optimizing your performance. So we wouldn't want, like any exercise machine, people need to pay attention to using good posture and form and engaging the right muscles at the right time, so that they don't overdo it or strain something that's going to create an injury. And the same concept goes if you're an elite SUP paddler. You still have to pay attention to form so that you don't injure yourself. Mm-hmm. But their interest is more weighted toward improving efficiency and power and propelling their board through the water faster for longer, right? So it's a different need, but same kind of approach to get that result. I think from the general fitness point of view, what I like, my philosophy is that our fitness and exercise ideally does a couple of things, if possible. But then if you can't, if your exercise can't do these things, then you find the next best thing. Because most important for whatever it is that we want to do for our health, for our fitness, and for enjoyment of our activities, is consistency. We need to be able to do consistent exercise and vary the intensity, vary the duration. You know, there's sort of a formula, we call it the FIT formula, which is frequency, intensity, and time. So if, no matter what you're doing for your actual movement activity, your, whatever we do each week has to be, you know, something with that formula of frequency, intensity, and time. So I guess what I'm getting at is that first and foremost, I like to have exercise be something that takes you somewhere, ideally outdoors, but that's not always possible, especially in the winter. I also like to have people do exercise with other people. If it depends, some people are introverted and that's their release, they just want to be by themselves and all of that. But most people, by and large, they're going to do better over the long haul if 2 or 3 of their workouts per week are done with other people. It's that social engagement. It's and especially if it's a positive social experience, not a negative, degrading one, but a positive one. And I just think that, you know, if people are doing this vigorous physical activity, ideally doing it outdoors, and ideally doing it with other people, that's going to, you know, and I'm talking only once or twice a week, it's going to help them have motivation to do all the other workouts that they might need to do, especially if they can't get outdoors and they can't be with another person, and they're going to do it indoors, which leads me back to, you know, the Vasa SUP ergometer or swim ergometer or Vasa trainer or a Peloton bicycle or a treadmill or an elliptical or whatever people need to do to achieve their overall goals of health and fitness. I say, surround yourself with opportunities to get it done, whether that's outdoors, doing the sports or physical fitness activities that you absolutely are passionate about doing, or indoors, you know, that it's the next best thing. So that's where like the SUP Erg that you're using comes in, because I'm sure, you know, you would probably much rather have 90% of your experience on a board, on a lake, in the ocean, with other people, just sun streaming in your face and the whole bit, right? Most people would, because it's way more fun. But if you can't always get that, when you can get to the water, when you can get outside to do your sport, isn't it better to be fit and ready rather than get out there and, you know, like, I can't tell you how many surfers who use our equipment have told me, like, oh my God, before I got your machine, I'd save up all my money and go on this surf vacation. And for the first 5 days of my surf vacation, I couldn't even move my arms because the first day I had to paddle out against all these waves, and I killed myself the first day. And so then the next 5 days I got to lay in my bed to recover from the first day of surfing, which, what a waste, right? Nice. So it's so much better if we can go into our sports or our fitness activities prepared, physically prepared, mentally prepared, using the right form so we don't get injured, because that's just shooting ourselves in the foot. So that's sort of how I see this whole thing. It's not the end all, it's only a piece of, or it's a cog in the engine that keeps us fit, keeps us healthy, emotionally as well as physically. So there's where I'm at with that.
Well, and I so appreciate and agree with the whole, you know, you really should be working out outdoors. I mean, that's really where the motivation to stay with something comes from. We are humans, we're made to be outdoors, even when it's cold, even when it's yucky, you know, we're made for outdoor movement, but I think we forget that and we become kind of an indoor nation. And then we find it hard to work out because it's, you know, when you're in the comfort of your home, some people aren't comfortable. Like, that's their sanctuary, that's their home. They're not going to just, you know, break into a high intensity workout in their living room. So they need to be outside. But when they can't get outside, it is, like you said, really awesome to have something that keeps you up with your sport. And it doesn't take much. It's not like I have to get on my Vasa SUP Erg and be on it, you know, an hour a day. Even if I jump on it for 5 or 10 minutes and just get my cadence going and remind my body of what it does in the summer, then it helps me to, when I get on my board, no matter if it is in winter or if it's in the summer, I'm always ready. And what was cool for me as well was right when I got my SUP Erg, I had a very small baby, and it wasn't conducive for me to take her out on the water. She was too little, and yet I wanted to go paddle. So that was another benefit I saw with indoor equipment, or like the supplement, like you mentioned, these equipment devices that can be supplements, is that I got to paddle, and yet she was just sitting in her little baby carrier right next to me, you know. So
Right.
it kept my body ready for what was to come, and then it kept me happy because I was doing that movement that gave me that passion, you know, that zest.
Yeah.
And you know, speaking of motivation, like you've been in the fitness industry for the long time, and we're getting to that, you know, January 1st when everybody makes these New Year's resolutions. What do you think motivates people, and why do we feel like there is so much motivation problem with people that, you know, they start full strong into their fitness routine at the first of the year, but then it kind of tapers off? What do you think is missing?
Boy, it's a really great question. And I think there's a lot of different ways to answer that, and not any one answer is the answer, right? Everybody's a little bit different. But I think one of the things that's happened in our society is there's been a convergence of several different things that have happened. And I believe that the reliance on electronic devices, whether it's computers or phones or what have you, the ease of access of all of that, and as well as, you know, video entertainment, television entertainment, the type of work that our society has, by work I mean for employment, you know, I mean, I sit at a desk a lot of the time, and a lot of people do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be even more mindful and aware that these aspects of modern life, while they can be wonderful and enjoyable and convenient and all those other things, from a human physiology point of view, and maybe even a spiritual point of view, human spirit, we need to heighten our awareness about the downsides of this way of living.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, to me, that, you know, the human body and psyche really are, they have not even come close to catching up to what's happening with technology. And I think that I think that that gets in the way of motivation. Mm-hmm. Quite a bit. We don't always see like that we're living our lives a certain way, but we don't always really understand the negative effect of that. And so I guess what I would say is, I don't have an answer for why people might struggle with motivation, but what I could say is, instead of, maybe as an alternative to setting lofty goals and saying, man, okay, this is the year I'm going to lose 25 pounds, or this is the year I'm going to do an Ironman, or what have you. And all of those goals are respectable and admirable. But, you know, it starts with just opening the door and taking your first step outside, or jumping on that spinning bike that you have and pedal for 5 minutes, or, you know, looking at your grocery list and saying, you know, I really don't need those bags of chips, or the extra chocolates, or, you know, whatever people are doing. But the whole point being, take small little chunks, just look at small little things. And if each week a person can accomplish 2 or 3 small things and start to create habits out of those and feel good about those, like, you know, let themselves feel good for making small progresses every day, that's kind of what I think helps to build momentum and motivation, rather than starting out the year with this giant goal and then, you know, maybe doing too much too soon and getting injured, or too much too soon and go like, hey, this sucks, I can't do this, you know, or whatever it is. You know, they need to, you know, start with start with small steps, and maybe seeking out someone with your expertise and and advice to coach them a little bit on how they approach a sensible progression, that rather than getting overwhelmed. So I don't know if that's an answer for you, but I think that people need to be really curious and say, like, okay, if like let's say I'm a father of two teenage kids, right? And I love my kids dearly. I'm 61 years old now. So I have to say to myself, okay, my why for living has changed somewhat over the years. And now my why is like, okay, why am I going to keep myself healthy and fit? Well, one of my whys, or two of my whys, are my children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to be able to do stuff with them. I want to be able to be healthy and not be laid up or whatever it is. So whatever, people need to ask themselves that question, get real curious and say, why? Why do I want to be fit? Why do I want to lose 25 pounds? Why do I want to do an Ironman? Maybe that's really not the right thing. Maybe that's not the best thing for my family. But somewhere in there is the answer. Their why. Why for living? Why for doing what they're doing? A small business owner, I can tell you right now, well, it doesn't matter whether you're a small business owner or a worker bee in a factory or whatever it is, but keeping ourselves physically fit and is going to help us stay emotionally fit, spiritually fit. I mean, it's like fitness is the fountain of youth, whether people want to recognize it or not. I mean, it's pretty simple, but it's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that you got to go do the work. People have to do the work, but it doesn't have to be more than 15 or 20 minutes a day.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir because you already know all this stuff, but I think that I just think people have to get real. And that's when you get real and you get curious about ways that we can achieve, ways that they can achieve a routine that keeps them healthy and fit. And don't give up when they hit a stumbling block. Don't give up. Say, okay, well, that one didn't work, but let's try something different. Stay curious. Stay curious to find what works. And the best thing that could possibly happen is they stumble across doing an activity or a sport, or maybe an activity or sport with another person that they care about and they like. And now all of a sudden they go like, oh my God, I never knew that such fun could be had. And they get passionate about it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
but
yeah.
if they don't stay curious and keep looking for that and trusting that could come. I mean, it might be square dancing, who knows? But go for it. Whatever it is, just go for it.
Well, and here's why I love your answers, because I'm going to go a little nutrition nerd Jodelle on you right now, because those that listen to my podcast know I talk about dopamine a lot, which is your motivation neurotransmitter. And
Yeah.
when you started off by talking about, our device usage, and we're indoors and we're using all these devices, why can't we get motivated? These devices actually lower our dopamine. And dopamine is your motivation, your pleasure. Like, I want to get out and do things. And when we lower those dopamine levels, we naturally are going to, put our best foot forward the first of the year to make these goals that we want to do. But inevitably, without dopamine, without that motivation, they just don't transpire. They don't move forward. And couple that with the fact that it's colder when the new year hits in most places. So you're not going outside as much as you should. But what you said was so imperative. It's like when you take that step out the door, outside, that could be the small change that yields big results over time. So just, setting down the device, which also dopamine is responsible for not allowing you to question anything. So like you said, stay curious. And so when your dopamine levels are low, you're not curious anymore. You're just kind of that zombie that goes along with everything that the little internet in your hand tells you to do, instead of what's behind that, what's out there that I need to step away from and see and get motivated to try, even if that motivation is just one step out the door to try and to stay curious. So that's why I love your answer. I thought that was really something to people for them to ponder over is, okay, maybe what I'm going to do different this year is do Jodel's 30-day digital fast that's coming up. It's a digital diet that I'm putting together so people can step away from the devices and actually go, I have all this time on my hand that I'm not scrolling Facebook. Maybe I'll get into some sort of exercise that I've really wanted to try. Like you said, sometimes staying curious means you try that one exercise that you didn't know you would absolutely love and that you can do for the rest of your life. You don't have to set goals anymore because now you're doing that thing that you didn't know you loved so much. And I've actually heard a lot of people get on a paddleboard and say that. They stand up for the first time and they're like, where was this all my life? You know, so, or any sort of water sport in general can be very therapeutic like that, because water is very therapeutic. So just being around water can motivate you to continue to be around water. But one way to do that is to have something that offers you a way to kind of practice the thing you love inside, which takes me back to Vasa trainer. So let's talk about a few things. Like we've touched on, the surfers love it. Obviously me as a stand-up paddleboarder love it. Swimmers obviously love it. But what else have you seen that it's been really conducive for as far as fitness-wise?
Oh, I'm not sure I understand your question.
I mean, what all is a Vasa trainer used for? Like how many different sports can it be used for as far as
okay,
like
so
different genres?
okay, well, I tend to look at it in terms of the different models that we have.
Yeah, I know. I keep referring to the whole thing as a Vasa trainer. So
yeah. So do you want me to talk about like the ergometer, like the one you have, the SUP Erg?
Yeah, anything that you've seen people other than, you know, the things I've seen and the things I've sent you videos on, other people have sent you ways that they train on it, but I've seen so many different styles that people use the ergs for.
Right. Yeah, no, so it's a great question. And so what maybe I can, since people are listening, I'll try to create a visual with my words. So with the Vasa ergometer, we have a whole line of ergometers, but there's I call it the business end, or the front end, that has the fan wheel and the drive system, the drive cords that you pull on to make the fan wheel go around, and that also has all the electronics. So that piece, that front end of the ergometer, can be mounted to the wall, just as a standalone item mounted to the wall, like yours. We call it the Space Saver Erg. So when you pull on the cords, it's still the same feeling as if that front end was connected to the long monorail that has the rolling bench that goes along the monorail. Again, to give people a visual, think of a rowing machine that the seat rolls back and forth along a rail. But in our case, it's a long bench that's about 3.5 feet long, and you know, like a weight bench, and you lay on that, or sit on it, or whatever you're going to do. But so I'll come back to the Space Saver like you have. So people use it, they can put a folding bench in front of it and lay down and do swimming motions. Or you can sit on that bench and do like canoe paddling, dragon boat paddling. You can hook up a kayak shaft and do kayaking. You can move the bench out of the way and stand in front of it and do stand-up paddling like you do. You can use that same paddle shaft to do all kinds of exercises that are very similar to, if people are familiar with the TRX ripstick, it's like that, where you're holding this long, you know, paddle shaft kind of thing, handle, but when you do exercises, the resistance is the drive cords of the erg, not a rubber tubing or whatever. So there's different feeling that comes up with that. One of the most unique ways that I've heard it used, I was actually just in Florida at the same time that you were, but we didn't connect. But over at Montverde Academy, my colleague and friend Tim Crowley, who's the strength and conditioning coach over there, Montverde Academy is a private school, private high school. And they every year they produce like some of the best high school soccer, basketball, you name the team, they develop them, right? And many of these people on the basketball side go on to play in the NBA. Ben Simmons, who plays for the 76ers right now, is a good example, where a few years ago he was at Montverde Academy. And then he went, spent his freshman year in, I forget the school, Louisiana, or someplace in Louisiana. And he was, you know, they call him one and done. He 1 year at college, and then he was recruited into the NBA, and now he's playing for the 76ers. Well, so back up a few years ago, he gets a lower leg injury foot's in a boot. And Tim Crowley, my friend, has a whole fleet of Vasa ergometers and Vasa trainers there at Mount Bird Academy. So he puts these kids on the Vasa, and he has them either do swimming or kayaking, or sometimes it's SUP paddling, but it's a way for them to maintain fitness and upper body capacity when they can't use their lower leg, or they can't walk around or put weight on their foot or whatever it is. So that's one example. And in fact, when I was there, he introduced me to this other kid from Arkansas, Moses, I forget his last name, but Tim said to me, oh yeah, we've had him on the Vasa for the last 5 weeks because he's got this lower leg injury, and he's just now coming back to being able to play on the court. And the kid was nice as could be. I talked with him for a while, but when he left, Tim said, 3 years, that kid will be in the NBA. So it's really cool to see that a machine that I developed is being used in ways that I never even imagined. Or another good example that really warms my heart is when I find out that someone has had either born with a disability, or they've had a terrible accident, maybe they had their legs amputated, or something like that. Actually, there's a college professor nearby who was in a horrible car accident when he was 17, and he lost the use of his lower body at that age. But about 10 or 12 years ago, he discovered the Vasa ergometer, and he got the same one you have that's mounted to the wall, a space saver. He sits in his wheelchair and he faces it, and he does motions, like for swimming and then he turns his chair around, faces away from the machine, and that's the motion you use to propel a wheelchair. So I never even imagined that anybody like that would ever use my machines to do something like that. And this guy, so he's now involved with adaptive sports in the state of Vermont and even nationwide. He's advising people all over the place. He does triathlons on his own. He does open water swimming on his own. He does sledge hockey, and he uses his Vasa at home when he can't be doing the real sport itself. He's using his Vasa at home so that he can train for him. And that just warms my heart that he gets benefit from our machines. Absolutely. And I think a lot of wounded warriors and people with disabilities would benefit greatly from having the space saver model that you have.
Yeah, and I will say the action of pulling, because it does come with, you've got all these great accessories too that match the sport that maybe the person's training for, such as like the stand-up paddling paddle simulator that it feels like you're holding the T-grip of a paddle and everything. But the action of the pulling actually, because of the design of the flywheel, actually feels very similar to pulling through water. It's like you said, you could use a ripstick, you could use a resistance band or whatever, but it's not like what it is in the water. And when you're really training for your sport, or when you're just trying to get better at something, you need it to be as similar as possible and simulate that feeling as much as possible. So I think that that's so neat that it's able to do that.
Well, thanks. And then, some people, if they're really competitive, or they're just playing like numbers, the one big difference between the ergometers that we make and say using tubing or bands or a weight stack or whatever people use that has no numbers attached, they can just do it for time and measure repetitions. But with the erg, it measures your power output, and it measures, you can preset it so that you can do a certain distance. Like, let's say you wanted to go 1,000 meters, you can just preset that. And when you start your 1,000 meters, it counts down the 1,000 meters, it counts up in time, but it will give you a readout at the end to say, oh, my average power, or it's expressed in watts. That's the metric, but my average power was such and such, say 60 watts for that whole workout. So then you could take that same workout and do it next week or in 2 weeks, the same exact workout, and say, okay, how did I do this time? And it's no different than saying, okay, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to run a 5K on this one course, and then a month later I'm going to do that exact same course for time. How did I do? Am I improving? So it's a way to measure progress, and that can be motivation for many people who are interested in, especially if they want to improve performance. They like to measure things. Not everybody needs to or wants to, but it is another form of motivation.
Oh, the onboard computer is vital, because I didn't even realize what my strokes per minute were until I got that. Like, I really hadn't, there's some apps and things you can play around with, but I hadn't really done that. And so when I was actually seeing what my normal strokes were, I was like, I can do better than this. I can be competitive with myself and get better. So it's exactly like that. I would start out the first week with, okay, I'm going to stay with these strokes per minute. And then every subsequent week, I would try to improve those strokes per minute. And it vastly improved my speed and my endurance. And so, yeah, it was a really cool feature that I get a lot of use out of too. And one thing I wanted to touch on too, because we were talking about the onboard computer now, like if it's not on there, I was thinking the other day that, because mine actually ran out of batteries the other day when I was using it, so I had to put more batteries in. But I thought to myself, this is actually kind of interesting, because I'm on a device right now that's allowing me to exercise, but I have 0 EMF. So this is another Jodelle tangent that a lot of people listen to my podcast and hear me talk about EMF radiation and stuff. There's not a lot of equipment that you can work out on that emits no electronic radiation. And so I actually was really inspired by that fact that here I was rowing. I was actually sitting and doing like outrigger rowing. I was just kind of playing around with that. And I sat there going, wow, this is as if I'm actually on a device, but there's no, electronic radiation. So it's not harming my health any more than it's actually helping my health. It's helping me instead of harming me. So I thought that was interesting.
I hadn't really thought of it that way, because I haven't been as cognizant of EMF as certainly you are. But I'm gonna, after this, I'm gonna be looking up some things and maybe get a pair of those red glasses too.
Yeah, Raw Optics.
Yeah, they're really cool. What are they called?
They're from Raw Optics, RA Optics, and they block out all the blue light from the screen. So that way I'm not lowering my dopamine and I don't feel like working out later. So I want to make sure my workout gets in.
Interesting. Well, I didn't know any about this, but I'll be investigating. But something I wanted to mention was, so you mentioned about being able to look at your stroke rate or your cadence, your paddling cadence. And so the same principle applies to your SUP paddling as it does for outrigger or dragon boat or canoe paddling or kayaking, and swimming, especially swimming. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that we do to help people learn how to improve their form, but also the timing of when they're applying power, mm-hmm. is to, if you keep the stroke rate set at a certain number, okay, mm-hmm. let's just say it's 40 paddle strokes a minute. Let's just use that number, 40 paddle strokes a minute. And if you're looking at the power numbers, the watts on the ergometer display, then people can play around with their stroke to find that sweet spot. We use an expression in swimming that a lot of people who are adult learned swimmers, or in your case with SUP paddling, it is a relatively new sport in our society. And so people don't always, it's not intuitive as to how to paddle effectively. Mm-hmm. So we use this expression called a mono-speed paddle, where the blade goes in the water, but the speed at which that paddle shaft goes through the water stays constant through the whole stroke. Yes. Well, that's not ideal, because what we want is the blade goes in, and then we get to that catch point, you really want to pull with some force and then get out. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same with swimming. Swimming, there's all this jargon about, you enter the water, you want to get to what's called a high elbow catch position. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but you get to this position right here. But if I just keep pulling with the same speed and the same force all the way through, I'm not really propelling my body to the maximum, and I'm not training the most important muscles that are used in propulsion, which are the lats, the big muscles in the back. So we want to get people to teach, enter the water, don't put a lot of force until you're at that catch, then accelerate fast.
Right.
And using the Vasa Erg can teach you that, because not only can you see what your stroke is doing because you're above water, right? But you can watch the power numbers. And if you maintain the same stroke rate or cadence, the only way to increase your average power is by accelerating at the catch, which means you're actually, think of it like adding weights to your dumbbell, right? You know, you're adding more resistance. That's going to make you stronger.
Yeah.
So, you know, the goal would be, say, for someone who's doing, you know, maybe a long tour for stand-up or a long day, or maybe if they're racing, the goal would be you want to be able to sustain a higher power output for a longer period of time.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I just did a nice long charity paddle a couple years ago. It was 40 miles. This past year, I just did 22 miles. But you can't last a whole day on the water unless your stroke is efficient and you're using the parts of your body that you're supposed to be using, you know. And so I will testify that the Vasa trainer actually really helped me promote that catch and that pull right at the right moment, you know, because you can feel it when you're on the device itself. You can actually feel that. So I love that about it. And so with knowing all this, and we kind of talked about being outside a lot and trying to train for your sport that hopefully is outside, or train for your exercise that is outside. One kind of final question I had was, can this also, the Space Saver Erg, can it be attached safely outside in case somebody wanted to, let's say I wanted to train on my deck, get some sun and still be outside, but maybe I'm not on my paddleboard, but I'm still outside. Can it be hooked up outside too?
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a few considerations that someone might want to keep in mind.
Okay.
So the way our electronics are very precise, and they are subject to, if they're outdoors and subject to any kind of precipitation or humidity or salt air, like sea air or salt air or whatever like that, then the electronics can be affected eventually. I mean, like we have them on competitive swim pool decks. And after, you know, depending on how harsh the environment is, after 4 or 5 years, the copper connectors in the electronics will corrode, and then you won't get your readout. But in terms of all of the thing is built like a brick house. So, you know, even if it gets rainwater or anything on it, it's going to still function mechanically, but the electronics will be affected. So what I would recommend in that case is, if someone wants to use it outdoors, if they get the full length ergometer, we make a really nice protective cover that is weatherproof and everything, and they could just cover it with that. It's not going to help so much with salt air or really bad humidity, but it, you know, because that is pervasive. If it's a Space Saver Erg like you have, you'd have to fashion some kind of a waterproof. But you know, what I would do is go to a local hardware store and ask them for a waterproof, weatherproof cover for lawn chairs. Just find a way to fasten it on so that the wind doesn't blow it, and that'll help prevent you know, rain and everything from hitting it. Now, if you've got it outdoors but under a roof, under a shed, and where it's not going to get rained on or anything, then you're probably not going to have any issues other than eventually maybe the electronics will corrode.
So you're saying like the electronic onboard computer is what you're talking about, the electronics, but the erg itself would probably be okay other than corrosion from like humidity and stuff and salt?
Yeah, and even then, all the parts that like, so if you were to take the cover, the black plastic covers off your ergometer, you look inside and you'd see a drive shaft with a fan wheel in the middle and a galvanized steel housing around that. None of those things can be corroded. I mean, we've got them in really harsh environments. We use a special kind of protective coating on the drive shaft. The bearings are all sealed in the drive spool. So, you know, I've seen them I've seen ergs come out of really harsh environments, and it's amazing to me that, you know, after 10 years in this heavy chlorinated humid pool environment, the thing still works, but the electronics, the copper, the wires have little connectors on the end that plug into the power meter, the display power meter, and those will get corroded. The copper connectors will get corroded, and then it won't work.
Okay.
And then you have to replace them. You just have to replace them. It's expensive to replace them, but they'll work again until they corrode again.
Well, that's the last part I was going to mention too, is that talk about craftsmanship with this device. Like, it is really well crafted. Like, it's very much quality. Like I said, I was able to move it from one house to another and attach it to the wall easily. But yet at the same time, it's not like banging all around, or it's not wonky, hopping off the wall or anything like that. Like, it's so solid. So I really appreciate your craftsmanship in that too.
Thank you, thank you. Well, you know, I learned something from my grandfather a long time ago, and I use this expression a lot. It's called quality costs less.
Mm-hmm.
So even though our cost of goods and therefore the retail price on the machine is, you know, it's expensive, people, if they use it in the right environments in the right way, it'll last a lifetime. Yeah. I mean, we've got Vasa trainers that my company's 30 years old. We have people who got their Vasa trainer 30 years ago, and they still work perfectly. They just have to keep them clean and occasionally change out the rollers, you know, the seat rollers, or maybe some of the straps or whatever it is. But, you know, I won't be around in 100 years, but there'll be some Vasa trainers around.
I bet so. I bet you're right about that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a pleasure to talk about something I'm so passionate about. But if people want to find out more about this device and all of the many ways you can use it and all the different variations there are of it, how can they do that?
Probably the best way, Jodelle, is to just go to our website, and that is, it's vasatrainer.com. So I can spell that for people. It's V as in Vermont, A, S as in Sam, A, trainer, you know, trainer.com, vasatrainer.com. And then just kind of browse around, look at the different products. The stand-up ergometer is listed there, as well as all the other products. And if they have any questions and want to talk to a real person, the phone number is there. They can call us. We're always happy to talk with people. I mean, we keep regular business hours, but you know, we're real people, and we love to be able to help, you know, help people get the information they need to make a good decision, even if that decision means they don't need one of our products. I'm so passionate about, you know, health and fitness and helping to guide people. I mean, that's what drove me to create the products in the first place. It wasn't to try to make money. It was because I saw a need and I wanted to solve the training problems that people were having. So, you know, we're knowledgeable about lots of pieces of equipment, whether it's ours or others, and we can help people, you know, make good decisions there.
Yeah, I recognize that with how long I've known certain people in your company are all very, very helpful, and it goes beyond just, you know, answering questions about Vasa. So yeah, I think that even if people, like we talked about today, are lacking some motivation, they could probably just contact you and you'll have lots of motivating thoughts for them. So.
You know, I said something earlier about motivation. Let me leave you with something, or your audience with something. And this is not my original thing that I'm about to read, but it comes from, there's a website that was created by a guy named Frank Ferencik, and it's called the Exuberant Animal. Exuberant Animal. He created this little card. I'll have to remember to send one to you, but it's called the Antidote.
Okay.
And it's called, he says, take daily for health and exuberance. It's a list of items I'm going to read to you.
Okay.
First one is vigorous physical activity.
Okay.
Next is real food and pure water. Third is outdoor exposure in nature. The fourth is quality sleep and rest. Next is positive social experience. Next is play and good humor. And the next one is called meaningful engagement with the world. And I'm reading off of the one on my desk, and I added one more thing to this list, and it's called gratitude.
Oh, yeah.
And So I think, if someone wants to read about the antidote, just go to exuberantanimal.com. You could find out more about that. And Frank, for instance, has written a few books, and they might be really interested in, trying to explore what he's got about that. But, nowhere on that list is the use of electronics.
That's right.
Right?
That's
And
right.
so what I would encourage listeners to do is, this is not a black or white issue. It's not it's not a all or nothing issue. It's a be curious. People need to be curious about what's going to allow them to stay vibrant and happy, and try stuff. Be curious and try different things. Maybe less of one thing and more of another, or I don't know what it is, but there's a great statement that was actually told to me by a marketing designer, like a designer of brochures and websites and this and that. And we were redesigning our website, and he said this one statement to me, but it applies to everything in life. He said, "Perfection is the enemy of done." And if you think about that, perfection is the enemy of done. It goes back to what I said about just open the door and take a step. Okay? It doesn't matter. Maybe you're still in your pajamas. Maybe you've got these ratty old sweatpants on, or, whatever it is. You don't have to be perfect. Just go out and get going. Right? Just get going.
Yeah.
Take those small steps.
Oh, I'm definitely going to look up that exuberant animal. He sounds like a kindred spirit. I loved everything that you just listed off, and your addition of gratitude is priceless. So
yeah, I'll send a card, or maybe I can take a picture of it and send it to you if you like. And
yeah, that's wonderful.
I'll use my electronics to send it to you.
I'll put it in the show notes. Well, that's the one thing that electronics are good for, is it lets me communicate with you all the way from little Bentonville Library in Arkansas to Vermont. And so, yeah, there is good and bad with electronics, but if people would recognize that there's more to life beyond the electronics, that's where I'm trying to show them, so.
Well, yeah, right. Even I go back to how I grew up with, even just the kind of lessons I learned from my parents about food, about just food consumption. It's everything in moderation. And the times I got into trouble, whether it was, drinking too much alcohol as a teenager, experimenting, getting sick and blah, 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 I got that out of my system pretty early.
Right.
And I don't even drink alcohol, but, I learned some lessons then, because it's oh man, I was way beyond moderation. And, again, people have to figure out how to dial it in for their life, for what works for them. And moderation can go a long way, whether it's with our daily dose of electronics or exercise or whatever it is.
I agree completely. Well, and yeah, moderation needs to apply to many things that we do, huh? So I wanted to finally just allow my listeners to know that you've been generous enough to provide a promo code for them to save 5%. So they can use the code. I'll put it in the show notes below, but I'm going to list it here too. bonus/Jodelle, or -Jodelle, bonus-Jodelle. And that's going to allow them to check out your products and possibly purchase one for 5% off. So I'm excited to let them know about that too.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, I forgot about that. Thanks, Jodelle. That's great. Yeah, so if to use that code you just mentioned, I believe the way it works is once they go to our website, if they go to the shopping cart, there's a place where they can put that code in. Okay. Bonus. Is it bonus hyphen, Jodelle?
Yeah, like a dash. Yeah, like a dash. Yeah.
Okay.
Or hyphen. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rob, for your time today. I so appreciate it. And it was really fun. And I love talking about motivation and, getting outside the box, so to speak, so I really appreciate that. And
you're welcome. Thank you.
So you guys check out vasatrainer.com, and I'd love to do this with you again sometime. So maybe we'll be able to do it again.
Anytime. Thanks so much, Jodelle.
Thanks. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
If aging is all part of being human, then anti-aging is somewhat of a fallacy. But we can for sure focus on positive aging and doing so in a way that keeps our skin vibrant and supple. For that, I recommend the organic and well-crafted skincare line, Anne Marie Gianni. To try it out in a little sample form, click the link in the show notes.
Hey out there, so you've heard me talk a lot about F-bombs, dropinfbomb.com. So you may know they have nut butter packets, oil packets like avocado oil and olive oil for on the go, these handy little packets. But did you know that they now have, let me show you the right one, F-bomb Keto Crunch, and my daughter, my toddler, loves these. So these are little cheese crisps, and they're made from dairy that's without growth hormone, no artificial flavors, no gluten, and they're a nice healthy fat with only 1 carbohydrate. So it's pretty cool. Check them out, dropinfbomb.com, and use the code GETFIT to save 20% off your purchase. That's GETFIT to save 20% off your Keto Crunch purchase. You better hurry, because the last time I checked they were sold out, so I'm assuming they're going to be getting some more, but keep checking back, because these are wonderful, if not for you, then for the little one in your life to take on the go with you.